Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehorst. And in this video, we got to talk about She-Hulk. Does the comic book market actually care that the show is coming out in less than a week from now? Because it seems like although there's been some movement for some books, there hasn't been a lot of hype for others. And so in this video, I want to take a look at those books, take a look at where the market is, and see if we can make any determinations about how the show is going to affect the comic book copy. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps our channel doing things I would appreciate. But let's get into this video here today. Next week on Thursday, August 18th, we are going to get the premiere of the She-Hulk show on Disney+. Obviously, there's been a lot of marketing materials coming out about it. There's been a lot of trailers. There's been a lot of clips and things like that. We had that sort of, first impressions with the original trailer that didn't leave a good taste in the mouth of a lot of fans and a lot of collectors. And then we got the second trailer coming off the heels of San Diego Comic-Con, which I felt like was an improvement. Maybe some of the people start to get a little more excited right now. I think people right now are very, very kind of cautious about this show in terms of, what their expectations are. I think actually expectations are pretty low going into this series, but that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be an effect on the comic book market. So I did think that it would be interesting as far as like being a week out from the show, talking about where some of the She-Hulk books, or at least the ones that have kind of popped up with regards to first appearances of characters and things like that, where they currently sit in the market. And of course, the first one we have to talk about is The Savage She-Hulk #1 from 1980. A book written by Stan Lee. In fact, actually Stan Lee's last written book, I believe, that he actually had in comic books, and drawn by John Buscema. And this, of course, would be the first appearance of the character known as She-Hulk. Now, this is a book that has had a really steep decline in the market over the course of this last, year or so, especially when we think about not only the comic books going up in 2021 due to all the factors that were happening at that time, like the money printing, etc., and even up to now in the recent months with the looming recession and the current recession that we're in, or whatever you want to call it, if it's not really a recession because you want to change the definition. But the 1 year for this one was $1,000. The 30-day moving is $766. And I kind of feel like, right now it's probably where we're going to land. I mean, if we're thinking about the prices of this book in 2020, I mean, certainly if we think that we're going to reset to those prices at say $650, I mean, we're already seeing sales down here at $637 slash price of $740. Here's a $685. So we're already kind of selling right in line to what the prices were for this book, in 2020. And I feel like that's really interesting because we haven't even gotten the show yet. I mean, a lot of people, I think, were sellers after they saw the trailer, but this is sort of uncharted territory. I mean, we've certainly seen people have negative receptions to shows like Moon Knight or Eternals or whatever the case is, but you usually see the decline after the show, after the fact, not necessarily before leading into the show. This could just be, the effect of, say, the current economy that we're in, the recession that we're in. This could be like a multitude of factors, people thinking that the show is not going to be very good. But that's not to say that the book isn't selling, because as you can see here on Go Collect's Hottest Comics, if I sort by Bronze Age in the past 60 days, and I'm looking right here, She-Hulk actually is the #1 bought and sold book out there in the market. So there is a high volume for this book, but the prices are steeply declining, as you can see here from the graph. So this is one of those instances where I feel like there's a lot of people who are just trying to liquidate, who are just trying to sell. A lot of people are abandoning this book. And, to me, I think that's actually probably a good place to buy into this thing if you're actually a fan of the She-Hulk character, especially if you become a fan after the show or whatever the case is. I mean, it definitely feels like this is going to be a character that exists in Marvel for quite some time. But what do you guys think overall about the Savage She-Hulk book? Do you think that this is a good book to hold on? We'll have to see what ends up happening with her character. Now, leading into this show, there are some books that are actually starting to even spike in the market, and that is definitely a testament to, say, the book itself and the brand of that character, because, in this current economy, a lot of books have been correcting. But this book right here is actually one that has been seeing not necessarily record highs, because it's always going to be hard to match those record highs of 2021 now, but this book is starting to trend up overall. And the book, of course, I'm talking about is Daredevil #1, first appearance of Matt Murdock Daredevil. We saw in the She-Hulk trailer that Daredevil is going to be making an appearance, and not only just an appearance, but he's actually going to be wearing his classic suit right here, the yellow and red suit. And I think that that actually caused a lot of movement for this book in the market. If we take a look here, and I sort by, the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales, I sort in the Silver Age, right now Daredevil is the #12 overall book. It's jumped 10 spots, up from 2022, or up from #22, excuse me, in the past 60 days. So you can tell that the trailer has had that effect, that that has moved this book up the most in the market, maybe only short of that of Journey into Mystery Annual #1, which had an effect by Thor Love and Thunder. So this is another book that is moving a lot in the market. And even though, like I said, this is necessarily hitting all new record highs, you do see healthy sales across the board for this book. So if I look at the 6.5 here and I sort in 2022, just looking at some of the numbers, we're definitely trending upwards, where we had a high sale in 8,400, and then we had 72, 69, 72, and now in August we have another 82. So this is definitely a book that is looking pretty good overall. Daredevil #1 as opposed to She-Hulk #1. Obviously this has a lot to do with supply and demand and the census and things like that, but it does feel like people are really excited for the Daredevil character. Now there are some other She-Hulk books I think are good to talk about. Let's talk about first the books that are moving a lot in the market currently. We got Tales to Astonish #48, and what is the significance of this? Well, if you guys have been watching my channel, you would know that this is the first appearance of the Porcupine, a character that I actually love, but this is a character that made his appearance in the She-Hulk trailer, and we've actually seen a lot of raw copies starting to sell in the market for this thing. I mean, typically, being kind of a low-key Silver Age book, this is a book that maybe you'll see, one sale every few days or so, but now we're starting to see multiple sales a day for this thing, and that's just because we saw him one time in the trailer. But buyer beware. I definitely think that this is going to be a B-tier villain that really serves as a gag in the show. I'm sure that during his episode, if he can steal the scene, so to speak, maybe there will be people who are converted into holders of this comic book. But overall, I think that this is one that you should really only buy if you actually like this character. But one that doesn't necessarily have a lot of sales in terms of the graded copies. I think people would rather just buy a raw of this thing. But you can see here at the 7.65 range, there's actually 30-day sale movement, which I think is a testament to this character showing up in the trailer. Similarly to that, we have Daredevil #78. I've actually talked about this book before in my previous She-Hulk videos. This is the first appearance of Man-Bull. It was speculated for a long time that Man-Bull was maybe going to be one of the B-tier villains that showed up in the show. And in fact, we did actually see him in the trailer. Another one like the Porcupine book that has been selling a lot in the market, not necessarily graded copies, but we're seeing a lot of raw sales. These Silver Age books are selling, depending on the grade, anywhere from $40, $50, $60, $100, $120, depending on, the quality of the book. Additionally, another book that is moving a lot in the market is this one right here, West Coast Avengers #46. This is the first appearance of the Great Lake Avengers. You have the leader of the team who apparently is going to be in the She-Hulk show as well. So this is one that is moving a lot in the market. I think it's selling around that $15 to $20 range. So these are the books that have had the most movement. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that these are characters that, people weren't necessarily expecting to show up in the show. And that's really what we're seeing now with a lot of this like hype-driven, TV series and things like that, where, collectors are FOMOing into books. It's no longer the case where people are FOMOing into the books when they show up in those episodes. Like last year when we had all the Disney Plus series, the week of the show and episode to episode, people were buying those, White Vision books or the Scarlet Witch books or the, Falcon and Winter Soldier ones. And now here we are in 2022, and it's really the books that have had the biggest surprises in their reveals that often move in the market, even outside of the fact that, these characters have been rumored. It's like when Daredevil surprisingly shows up in a trailer, or when, Porcupine shows up in a trailer, or Frogman, or whatever the case is. These are the characters that actually have a lot of movement in the book, not necessarily She-Hulk, who of course we all knew was going to be showing up. But let's talk about a few other books really quick that have been, selling a little bit in the market. Not that much overall, but generally speaking, there has been some movement. There's Defenders #18. This is the first appearance of the Wrecking Crew. Doesn't seem like we're going to get a comic accurate version of the Wrecking Crew, but it does have some movement in the market due to the fact that they also showed up in the trailer. And then similarly, I talked about the Frogman book. These two books are not necessarily selling as much as the other ones I previously talked about, because Frogman and the Wrecking Crew were actually in the first trailer. So I think they got most of their hype and buy-in, some months ago, but there have been consistent sales for these books leading into the show. Some of the other books, obviously, Tales to Astonish #90, first appearance of Abomination. This is another one that has had a little bit of movement in the market, but generally speaking, not so much, because of the fact that we all knew Abomination was coming. I mean, Kevin Feige announced it all those months back at the original D23 when we knew that Abomination was coming back. We've also had the movement with him in Shang-Chi. So, this one is sort of hard for people to FOMO buy into, but I would definitely watch this one a lot. I have a feeling, at some point, point, maybe in the post-credit scene of the last episode of the She-Hulk show, I can imagine Abomination having a scene with, Contessa, and she recruits him for the Thunderbolts team. And if that happens, I definitely think that'll be the case when people start to FOMO into this book. Another book, of course, to talk about is Marvel Superhero Secret Wars #3, first appearance of Titania. This is also a book that is selling a lot in the market, and surprisingly, this is one that is selling a lot in its 9.8 grade. You can actually see this is one that has had a huge, steep decline. I mean, the entry point into this book, where it currently sits right now, is so low. Actually, it's a pretty safe entry point. I mean, if we're thinking it's basically selling right around that 2020 price, but you can see that this book has sold quite a lot. Just here in August, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, just on the first page here, like we have 2 pages of 9.8 sales. Obviously, there's a lot of copies out there in the market, but this is one that is actually moving a lot, just not setting its all new record high. So interesting for this one. We'll see what happens with this character. I think a lot of people do not like Titania's costume, which I think is fair to say. It's fair to critique it, but we'll have to see where it ultimately goes. I mean, maybe it works in service to the story overall. And the last 2 books I want to talk about are ones that I feel like could be major FOMO buys by the time they get revealed in the show. These are the ones I would look out for the most. The first one is What If Planet Hulk #1. This is the first appearance of Scar, the son of Hulk. There's been a lot of rumors that Scar is going to be making an appearance in this show at some point, and that's going to lead to maybe the events of World War Hulk. Again, World War Hulk, big rumors at this point. We have no idea if that's actually going to be a thing, but this would be the book that I can imagine is going to have the biggest FOMO once we eventually reveal, if we reveal, that Scar is in the show. Additionally, the other one, which I'm not necessarily so confident that we're going to actually get the leader in the She-Hulk series, but I could imagine that if Tim Blake Nelson at some point in the show shows up, Tales to Astonish 63, this book is going to 100% blow up. There's going to be so many FOMO buys because this is a book that has had a pretty major correction from its all-time record highs. I mean, a lot of people had been specking on this book for quite some time, but it certainly is possible, and it would make a lot of sense if we saw the leader show up in the She-Hulk show. I mean, there hasn't really been like a lot of murmurs about it. Maybe Marvel is keeping this one really close to the vest. It's hard to say, but I do actually think that there have been some rumors, and I have personally heard some things about the leader, so it is interesting to think about. Who knows if he shows up? I mean, it may not happen, but it'll be really crazy to see what the market does if he does. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. That was me talking about the She-Hulk books. What do you guys think about She-Hulk right now? Are you guys excited about the show? What do you guys think is going to happen in the market? Are people going to be buyers? People going to be sellers? Let me know what you think. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.